Greetings and konnichiwa, and welcome to the Onyx Tavern. This is your host, the Barkeep, bringing you podcast 79 here at the Tavern, presented by Hirotaku.com. Well, anybody who's followed Power Rangers at least through its early days will be familiar with the character of Ernie, the guy who ran the juice bar for the teens in Mighty Morphin all the way up to about a quarter of the way through Turbo. Now, the thing about Ernie is that when you really look at his character, he didn't have much of an impact throughout the series. In the fact that he really didn't change anything, he didn't really have any major plot points. And yes, he did get himself involved with the Rangers' lives. Particularly, he helped Tommy in football season. There was a mystery plot involved with him. And apparently he was the original Gerber baby. Stuff like that primarily. But he was a good secondary character to have in the series. To keep things a little bit lighthearted, to keep things fun, and it was a good contrast to the comedic styles of Bulk and Skull, of course. Now, what's actually interesting about the character of Ernie is that his original origins are actually a lot different in pre-production of the series than what actually happened within the series. So today, I'm going to go ahead and talk about Ernie as far as what he ultimately became, which I gave you a brief rundown of already, and what was originally planned for Ernie, and kind of like, what if that did continue, what if that actually happened, what would have been the impact of the series, and kind of, you know, let's play that what if game, because, hey, everybody loves what ifs, right? So that's what we're going to go ahead and do. Now, there's an interview of which I will go ahead and post a link of David Fielding, who originally played Zordon, specifically Zordon's face. He was interviewed by Geek Evolution, which is an awesome channel, by the way. They have really good Trexperts segment on there, as well as the Superhero Rewind is amazing. Not favorable to Power Rangers, unfortunately, but it's amazing nevertheless. So I will have a link for that video, specifically for the YouTube video of this interview to get more details. And of course, I would highly suggest you subscribe to the Geek Evolution channel. Nevertheless, basically, amongst other things that David Fielding basically stated in his interview, is that the original idea is that David Fielding was going to play Zordon as far as, you know, his looks, his voice, and all that kind of stuff. But he was also going to play the character of Ernie. What originally was planned was that the characters of Zordon and Ernie were going to be one and the same. That when he's not Zordon, he's at the juice bar watching the Rangers, making sure that they are safe in their day-to-day lives, basically. But for whatever reason, that was scrapped. Specifically, David Fielding makes the comment that the joke was that a fat guy runs the juice bar would be funny. And, you know, let's be honest here. What we got from Ernie, he was a very comedic character, and he was very interesting. But what if Ernie was Zordon and Zordon was Ernie? How would that change the dynamic of the series? Because I like the idea that's kind of brought up with Zordon being Ernie, is that he's watching over the Rangers. You know, one of the criticisms that I hear about Zordon, and there's a number of criticisms and we'll kind of get into this, one of them is that he doesn't particularly care about the Rangers too much, is that he cares about his mission, about fighting Rita and so forth. Yes, there'll be instances where he's like, no, you need to leave your lives as Power Rangers, blah, blah, blah. Or no, you have to lead your lives as teenagers. This comes before being a Power Ranger. But let's also keep in mind that those are only in there because of plot contrivance of getting certain actors off the show and getting certain actors in the show. But I've heard criticisms, again, he doesn't particularly care about the Rangers as people as much as he cares about them as soldiers. So what this move, I think, would have done is really show a fatherly nature between Ernie, or excuse me, between the Rangers and Zordon and Ernie, Zordon and Ernie. And I kind of like that idea because, you know, in the first Power Rangers movie, Kimberly makes the line when Zordon's dying that he has been a father to them all. Now, while that continuity is separate from the television series, if we apply that same line of dialogue to Power Rangers, at least up to that point, which would have been the second going into the third season, that line doesn't particularly make sense because Zordon's always been kind of matter of fact with them, rarely showed any type of emotion. If he did, it was more of humor and amusement of certain things going on. Yes, he was proud of the Power Rangers, but he didn't seem like a father figure to me throughout the series. I can't think of a single instance where I would say that he offered sage, wise advice that kind of helped the Power Rangers. I mean, yeah, he was wise and he would give them advice on how to win, but he never had a moral lesson of the day, per se. He didn't have anything where it sounds like a father talking to his son is like, well, you know why that happens? Because you didn't do this. The thing about the Power Rangers is that they kind of learn the moral lessons on their own, and there was never a situation where Zordon really put them in there to learn on their own. Yes, there's Gung Ho, that's the best example, but that's like one example out of many. I mean, look at Day of the Dumpster, you know, the only thing he really kind of taught the Rangers in that is like, well, if you don't have the powers, you're going to be attacked by putties and you're going to be hurt and all that, which is kind of an odd way to learn that. That's why he didn't teleport them back from the command center back to Angel Grove, that he allowed them to leave because he knew that they would probably be ambushed and all that. So that's one thing to go ahead and keep in mind. But if we actually put him in the position of Ernie, imagine a character like Trini, my absolute favorite, comes up to him and says, you know, I'm having a hard issue with this. And then he can say to Trini some sort of advice that informs her to her current situation that she's having, but it can also translate over into battle. Because then you can keep Zordon the way he is, but you can have that emotion, the, for lack of a better term, human side of him shining through his advice as the wise bartender. Not that all bartenders are wise, mind you. But that's an element that I see could have worked within the series. I think that's something that is worth exploring for a lot of the mentors. A lot of the mentors now are kind of one-on-one, but the problem is that a lot of them have this kind of, you know, commander and subordinate role into it. It's very rarely a familial element, a family element, or a best friend type of situation. I mean, yeah, you got Nick and Udana and all that, but it wasn't really like that until the end, and he never really had this kind of like motherly, or they didn't have this mother-son relationship and all that. I mean, again, a lot of the mentors are very stoic and serious-minded fellows and don't really have that kind of friendship between them, and I think that's what Zordon could have needed in the series, and this would have been a good way to go ahead and, you know, bring it out. And of course, another benefit is, supposedly, through a couple of sources, Ernie was supposed to know the identity of the Power Rangers, which is why he always gave him free drinks to show his appreciation. But if he actually knew the identity and he was Zordon, then he could always contrive a way to have the Rangers actually, you know, go off and do something. It's like, hey guys, I need you back here or something like that. Now, whether that was actually going to go ahead and be, like, whether, the whole fact is, if Ernie actually knew who the Power Rangers were in the series as is, that's debatable. You can say that, you could be like, maybe not, and go to different evidence for and against it. But the question would be is if the Rangers would eventually find out that Ernie is Zordon. I imagine that would have happened somewhere down the line, but I almost kind of like keeping that separate, just because I've been good for the Rangers. I think they could be mad at Zordon and tell them one thing, but then go to Ernie with their problems and say another thing, and kind of Zordon would be like, I understand. Almost manipulating the Rangers in a way, but I would have liked to see some sort of dynamic like that play out. Now, on the negative side, what would have been bad in this situation of Zordon and Ernie? One of the other criticisms I hear, Zordon doesn't do anything, is that he gets a bunch of teenagers and recklessly throws them into danger to go ahead and save the world when that's something he should be doing. Now, let's ignore the main issue is that he's strapped in a time warp and he can't do anything. But most people think, well, he should still be able to do something instead of enlisting a bunch of teenagers for his cause. Fair criticism, again, not minding the tube and all that. And I think that if the Zordon-Ernie relationship was to happen, that criticism would have been ramped up. Because let's consider for a second. The whole reason Zordon is unable to help is he's trapped in a tube in another dimension, somewhat. Again, the movie throws that a little bit off as far as what we're supposed to go ahead and believe. But let's assume for the moment that Zordon does not have a physical form and cannot actually leave that tube, which, again, is the case here. But if he is Ernie, I imagine it's a Wizard of Oz situation. It's somewhere in the back of the juice bar there's a transmitter to where he's transmitting to the command center to the Rangers. Okay? If he was Ernie and he had a physical body, then I can see a criticism that it's like, well, why isn't he doing anything? He's in the command center giving them orders. He's being their best friend at the juice bar, but why isn't he rangering up, basically, and going out and fighting? So I could see that being problematic, and probably one of the reasons why they dropped it from the concept idea is that if he has a physical body, but he's not doing anything, then we have a problem. Even the leader for the tattooed teenage alien fighters from Beverly Hills, I think it was Nimbar, they established that he wasn't able to fight at all, and he had to enlist teenagers because he was a giant blob of goo, basically. The idea, I think, was to render our mentors unable to fight. Which is why I have kind of an issue with the current Splinter and the new Ninja Turtles series, or really, Splinter in general from Ninja Turtles, because he's a mentor figure who is capable of fighting, if not more capable than the Turtles, but never does anything. So I always wonder why that criticism gets lobbied towards Zordon, but never to Splinter. Not that I don't like Splinter, I love Splinter, but it is kind of odd. But going back to Ernie, you know, again, even if he's David Fielding and whatever he looked like and whatever his posture or whatever was going to go ahead and be and stuff, I would definitely question why doesn't he actually help the Rangers in physical form. Maybe they could have done that down the line and made him the Green Ranger or the White Ranger or whatever plans they would have had. I'm sure the Tommy thing might have played out differently. That's just me speculating, who knows. But to make him a passive character while having a physical form would have been a mistake. For him being passive as he is, being trapped in the tube makes a little bit more sense. So I guess that's ultimately why it was dropped. Now, but what overall impact would that have had into the series? And again, I think it would mainly be there for those emotional moments, the lessons of the day, and helping the Rangers and offering a helping hand when he can't be there, basically. And, you know, I discussed this with somebody else previously, and what they had kind of pointed to me, and I think it's kind of an interesting thing, is that it's almost a God-Jesus religious allegory thing. Because people are using religion and Power Rangers to negative effect, unfortunately, but using Zordon as God, basically, giant floating head in the sky. I mean, yeah, I guess I could see that in some way. But somebody pointed out, I was like, but Jesus is like the physical manifestation of God and all that. So Ernie would have been the physical manifestation of Zordon. So you almost have kind of like a religious thing going on. And I go, that's kind of interesting. I don't know if I would go ahead and buy it. But I wonder if that would add more dimension and depth to the series if you do analyze it that way. And of course, it would also make me wonder, would Zordon ever sacrifice himself? Because we've seen him sacrifice himself actually a number of times, even before Countdown to Destruction, given his powers and all this for the Rangers. He doesn't eventually do anything for himself until Turbo, when he chooses to leave the Rangers to go home, basically. Which I don't blame him for that decision whatsoever. But you almost wonder that if there was, if Zordon is meant to be like a religious allegory of any kind, the way he is, I wonder if having a physical form like Ernie would have, again, brought that Judeo-Christian kind of belief thing, and almost like, again, maybe he would have self-sacrificed, or he had to no longer be Ernie to help the Rangers or something. Again, just speculation based on something that somebody and I had discussed previously, and I just thought I would throw that in there, basically. But I think for what we got, it wasn't bad. I mean, again, Zordon, Zordon was more important than Ernie. So to be able to make both of them better by combining them, I think, would have helped. I think that would have been good. But I'm not going to rewrite Mighty Morphin and say that they should have done it. I think what we have today is good enough. I think it works. And let's be honest, what we've eventually discovered with Power Rangers since Mighty Morphin is that they don't always need a mentor there. A lot of Ranger teams don't have mentors or somebody directly giving them commands, and they're able to survive just fine. Lost Galaxy being a prime example. Time Force also didn't really have a mentor figure there. And I would almost say that those teams are actually more interesting to watch instead of having somebody who's in command and is, of course, liable for what's going on. But I do want to see a more caring and family feeling, fatherly feeling to the mentor ranger relationship here in the future. Of course, you got Gosei, who's nowhere near that. Captain Mitchell, he had Ryan and Dana, but of course he always really treated them more like, I guess, soldiers and employees more than he did, father and daughter, or father and son, basically. I've already mentioned Udana, but it's just something that I would like to see a little bit more instead of this kind of stoic figure. I want to see more of a fatherly figure out there. And yeah, some of them have come close, Mentor G and all that, but I think overall we haven't really seen that. But, just to kind of close this discussion out, I really liked Ernie. It was sad that he had to go ahead and leave the series. Lieutenant Stone would have been a good replacement. Had they actually continued him into Power Rangers in Space and everything. And yeah, it was just kind of a fun ride to have Ernie in there and see him and just have him kind of in the background, always helping the Rangers. It's always good to have a character who's an ally of the Rangers that's not in the battlefield, basically. So yeah, that's all I have to really go ahead and say about the subject today. But what do you guys think? Is everything fine the way it is, or should there have been a Zordon-Ernie dynamic going in there? Would that have made the series better? Would it have made it worse? I would definitely want to know your thoughts, so comment below. Otherwise, I want to thank you guys for joining me. Have yourself a good evening, and the tavern is now closed.